we hear that the government is on the cusp of a deal with the EU. What does the DUP know of the details?
Well, we know very little of the details. We have seen quite a lot of speculation in the press. We have had briefings from some of the officials, and of course Jeffrey Donaldson has met the Prime Minister. But we, apart from the kind of headline stuff, which really doesn't mean a great deal, we haven't seen any legal text, and that's of course the important part of any deal. But what we do know is that there doesn't appear to have been any deal on the central issue which affects Northern Ireland, and that is the imposition of EU law. All of the problems that we face with not able to get goods from GB, checks on goods coming from GB, and disruption to our economy stems from the fact that we're under a different set of laws than the rest of the United Kingdom, and therefore checks are required to make sure we're complying not with British law but with Brussels law.
I know you've got 7 tests that you are saying that any deal needs to pass, but is that reasonable under the circumstances? Surely compromises need to be made on both sides. What's the ultimate red line, Sammy? Is it this continued EU-CJ jurisdiction?
The one thing which is the red line for us, and if the deal cannot meet this, then all of the other problems are going to continue anyway. And that is the fact that Northern Ireland will be, as far as we understand it, will continue to be under laws made in Brussels. Laws that we don't have any say on, laws that we have to implement. Otherwise, the European Court of Justice will make judgments and will decide what sanctions are imposed. So the red line for us, and all of the other things will fall into place if this is met. The red line for us is that there should be no EU law applying to this part of the United Kingdom. I mean, no other country in the world would give a say to a foreign administration to make the laws which affect the people of the country to which they belong. No other country would accept that. And in Northern Ireland, not only are we given those laws and imposed those laws on us at present, but they're imposed without any say, either by British ministers or by politicians in Northern Ireland. So that's our red line. If that's met, then I think all of the other things will fall into place anyway.
I mean, Rishi Sunak has described himself as a Brexiteer, a Conservative and a Unionist. So do you not have faith in his negotiation skills on this? Do you believe him?
Well, just because he's got negotiation skills, I've no doubt he has negotiation skills. We want to see the outcome of his negotiations. Having the skills doesn't mean that you get the outcome. But I mean, you've summed it up. He's a unionist. So he must ensure that the integrity of the union is not compromised. He's a Brexiteer, so he must ensure that what was sought in Brexit for the United Kingdom is delivered to the whole of the United Kingdom, and that's the judgment that we will make at the end of the day on the deal that he comes to. I mean, don't forget, other people Boris Johnson claimed to be a Brexiteer but left us in the situation we find ourselves at present. So, just because you're a Brexiteer and a Unionist doesn't mean you will finish up with the deal, which reflects that if you don't try hard. And, I've got to say, if you look at this, the way in which these negotiations have been approached, the government had an alternative, normally the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill, and yet it hasn't seen that bill through the House of Lords and back into the House of Commons. That would have been the thing which would have strengthened the Prime Minister's hands most, because of course he could have said to the EU, if you don't get a deal which I find acceptable, I've got an alternative.
You mentioned Boris Johnson there. What's the nature of the conversations you've been having with him behind the scenes?
Well, I mean, Boris Johnson has taken the same view as we have, that the protocol bill should be delivered. Then the government will have an alternative and will be able to strengthen its hands with the EU. That's the extent of the conversations that are had, that he believes, the same as we do, that the government has to have an alternative. And don't forget, the Prime Minister has said that he seeks to get from the EU what is contained in the protocol bill. So if he has a protocol bill in place, he can always say to the EU, we'd love to do this by negotiation, we'd love to do this by agreement, but if we can't do it by agreement, then as a sovereign nation, we will make decisions about our own country.
But are you confident that he's doing this altruistically in the support of the DUP, or is it just for his own political manoeuvring?
His motives are not important to us. What we need is as much leverage on the government as we possibly can at present. I'm not going to make a judgment on his motives. All I'm going to say is that at this point in time, our objectives and his objectives seem to coincide, and if that helps to put pressure on the government to come to the kind of deal which we believe is necessary to save the Union, to keep Northern Ireland as part of the United Kingdom, and to ensure that democracy and democratic processes are used to establish laws in Northern Ireland, then we can work with that. OK, thank you very much for joining me, Sammy Wilson, DUP MP and Chief Whip. Thank you.
Thank you.